You're really talking about sitting down and really getting a clear vision of what that's going to look like. You're sitting down, you're understanding what are those roadblocks or those challenges that are going to come up and how can we financially plan for them. You're sitting down and you're getting clear on the values that you want to have as a family in your relationship and how you're going to actually instill those. And so everything that we're talking about, it's so fascinating because people, when they think about investing, they're thinking about money. But money is just the tool. It's just the catalyst to allow you to be able to go out and actually create that in the real world and have the ability to be able to do those things and have those experiences. So it is that simple. I mean, we have a process we walk through people through in one of our programs, and we have an advisor on our team that's a 17-year certified financial planner that helps people figure out some of these financial pieces. But at the beginning, it really comes down to answering those questions for what's important to you. Because, Bill, what you want from your life is going to be different than the next guy down the road, different from what I'm looking for and across the board. So no one can tell you what it is. They can inspire you to have some ideas. But I actually want to go on a little side quest because, I heard you mention something about this routine that you have with your wife. How long have you guys been married?
25 years.
So you guys have been married 25 years. And, I had the gift of having two parents that are both amazing people, but they hate each other and they have for 30 years, and a lot of poor relationship examples in front of me. So for the last decade, I've been asking this question, and I'd love it if we could take a little side quest to answer it and kind of dive into what you've done to create that marriage. But if you were to look back 25 years before you got married, and you were going to go talk to that version of yourself with all the knowledge and wisdom you have of creating a great 25-year marriage, what would you tell that younger version of yourself is the important things towards creating that type of lifelong partnership?
I think I would go back and look at the mistakes that I made. And I was, for the better part of, 15 to 17 years, I was focused on business. And I thought that I was doing the right thing. And I'm the typical quadruple type A, the Tim Allen from Home Improvement, type of bust through walls, entrepreneur. And that's why I did so many startups. One, because I didn't like large businesses. But the problem was I was married to those businesses probably more than I was married to my wife. And if I didn't have just an incredible wife, I've never slept in a hotel. I've never had to sleep on the couch. She has always had the patience of Job when I'm traveling, when I'm doing whatever. And we would mitigate everything before we go to bed. And I think that's something that you've got to choose your spouse wisely based on where you're moving forward. And then what I would say pre-marriage, her and I didn't have this discussion, and I would have it if I had to do it over again, is really explaining and being 100% transparent and honest about what my goals were, what drives me, and what life is going to look like. And that's a really hard conversation when you're 24, when you're getting married. I'm 50 today. So I can't even visualize myself being able to have that conversation because she didn't know what to expect going into this. And she's just been a freaking trooper. She's been my lover, my best friend, my business partner, everything, for 25 years. And we talk about this a lot. Man, life is so different today than it was back then. I mean, we've opened and scaled restaurants together. We were doing drop shipping with Brazilian bikinis and sarongs and swimwear in the early 90s on AOL chat rooms. We've been through all of it, but we weren't prepared, right? And it took having our oldest daughter and my wife bringing up my disdain for my father that left me, left my mother, all that angst that I've had for the last 40 years of my life. And she didn't mean it, but she said, "You're turning into your father." My oldest daughter was 4.5 years old. She's like, "We haven't been on a vacation since Gentry was born. You work 7 days a week. You're taking care of your customers more than you're taking care of your family." And that's when just the light went off. And I had always had the drive to not become my father and do what he did to me and my mother, but in a different way. I wasn't really consciously choosing it, but subconsciously, I was just putting something else as the priority. So if I could go back, I would really want to take the knowledge I have today and explain to her what's going to happen over the next 25 years. Because I think most marriages that we go into, they just don't have deep enough conversations. It's really surface. Even when you go to marriage counseling and stuff, it's kind of surface level stuff. And I think people are afraid to have those conversations. And that's the biggest piece of advice that I would give to me is don't be afraid to open up. You don't have to protect her. She is so strong. You can share the good, the bad, and the ugly. All she wants to do is know what really is going on in here.
Well, I really appreciate the vulnerability because you're speaking directly to me. I'm sure a lot of people will get benefit from this, but I carry a lot of that fear and trauma from the past, and I've put so much into business that I am very much in line with you. I'm pre-marriage. I'm at that point where I'm wanting to have those types of conversations to pick somebody who's going to be a ride or die partner for the long term, but knowing what challenges are going to come up when you're an entrepreneur, when you're in business, and being in alignment that this is the life that you're going to create. I think there's probably nothing more powerful that a couple could do. And even if you're in the midst of it now, no better time to have it. Just like you guys had it, you had that wake up moment that made you realize that, oh, well, now's my chance to really reconnect and rebuild so that the next chapter of life is even better than the last.
I agree. And it's rebuilding financially and personally. Look, I'm afraid of going bankrupt. I've got over $20 million in liquid assets. I've done very, very well for myself financially, but I'm still afraid of going bankrupt, right? And because I've been close before, I never have. And it was as recent as 2010 when I lived in Nashville when we had the flood right on the back of the recession. So that's not that long ago. And that's kind of what drives me. But I also think a lot of entrepreneurs end up being bankrupt personally at home. They may be successful financially, but when you have too much focus on that and your home life is not the priority, then you become bankrupt at home. You look at the divorce rate in the country is like 50%, but if you look at successful entrepreneurs, it's like 72%. That's almost 45% higher than the standard. It's because most of us have that drive. Most of us engulf our lives into scaling and growing businesses. And I'm a believer that we need to put that same effort into our spouse and into our children.
Yeah, there's nothing more important than your primary relationship. It's one of the biggest financial decisions that you make is to really build that foundation. If you're going to be an entrepreneur who's going to go and get on a rocket ship, you better make sure that you and your family are on the same page so they're coming along with you. Otherwise, you end up growing beyond, and then that separates things. So I appreciate you joining me on that side quest and sharing some wisdom. At this point, whether we talk about the specific number or not, what is your number, the point at which you've made it where you don't have to work? And the reason I ask this is because, back in 2020, I sold my personal home. I went out to Hawaii during the pandemic and you couldn't get on the island. We found a way on. And there was this retired builder who owned the Airbnb we were renting. It was the former Beach Boys estate, this big, beautiful 9-acre spot. But I was talking to him and we were kind of sharing the vision, what I'm creating, and I'm driving forward. And he asked me this question. He said, well, what's your number? What's that point where it's enough, where you're going to be content, where you can live the life you want to live? And, that number always kept growing and changing. And I don't think there's anything wrong with the growth and change, but it made me really think about that. And so when it comes to, you've clearly gone through some of this vision setting process. What did coming up with that number and drawing that line in the sand do for you? And what would you recommend other people take away from doing the same?
So I think those thoughts, those notions, those desires are going to change as you evolve as an entrepreneur. I mean, if you're in the early stages of the journey, it's going to be completely different than where I'm at, which is basically on the back end at this point. So the way I think today, I could have never thought of when I was 25 or 30 years old. My number financially, I've already hit that number. It used to be $500,000 a year in total income. And then as you hit that, then you continue to grow and you continue to grow. I make multiple 7 figures today, but I'm optimizing down, as I said earlier. Like my owned real estate portfolio did $997,000 in net income in 22. My goal is to actually drop that down. If I can sustain it, that's great. If I could increase it vanity-wise by $3,000 to hit 7 figures, that would be a mental victory. But the reality is my number's time. And I would have never answered it with time 20 years ago. It's literally 15 is my number.
Thanks for listening to the Investor Mindset Podcast. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. And if you'd like to watch another, Here's one up top, and here's another great video right down below.